Airbnbs are a very popular investment, and before the pandemic and even during the pandemic, interest rates aren't high, right? Especially during the pandemic, interest rates are super low, and New York City is still an international city. People love New York, right? Not really my type of city, but let's be real, it's a number one, it's the biggest financial hub in the world, and it still has a lot of people going to New York City. People talk about how everyone's moving out of New York, but let's be real. New York City still maintains a crazy population, construction all-time high, unlike San Francisco, which virtually already has 3 canceled skyscraper projects, and even Google canceling their $15 billion revamp of Silicon Valley. But New York City still getting a lot of big money investments. And now New York City's Airbnb is going bust. It's imploding, and this is not a joke, guys. Airbnb in New York is a very lucrative market. I mean, if you just type in New York for the Airbnb industry, you make so much money, man. Like if you go to New York City, search some of the prices, it's crazy expensive. We're looking at hundreds of dollars per night for a very simple bedroom, right? Let's look at this one in Midtown, $219, right? Let's look at this one, hotel in downtown, skyline views. This is a very, very lovely unit. And overall, this is a 1 bed, 1 bath. You could have 2 people living here, and they're literally charging you guys to over $200 a night. This is, I think, the W. You could actually buy condos there. 1 beds go for like $1 million to $1.2 million. And hey, man, like these nights are usually always rented out. So Airbnb is an extremely lucrative market, and this is causing the city to clamp down on this. If you look at New York City, very high HOA, right? Very high home insurance, and especially high property taxes. Right now, with very high interest rates, short-term rentals are what's keeping a lot of these properties afloat. But of course, if you look at a couple months ago, apparently New York came out with this law, which basically banned Airbnb. Now, the only units that are allowed to be Airbnbs in New York now are going to be the ones where people actually live in them. So let's say you have a 4-bedroom condo, you live in one of the bedrooms, you can actually rent out your unit because you're living in it, and you can't exceed more than 2 guests. So Airbnb basically just fell off a cliff. And now a lot of people are coming out and saying that the costs have surged, interest rates are high. If you look at more than a third of the group's 500 members of an Airbnb group says that they're going to be going to the foreclosure route, or they have to sell the unit for a very cheap price. If you guys look at the amount of sales for Manhattan and the rest of New York City, it's super low. Sales of new condos in Manhattan fall 40% from the prior quarter. Not a lot of people are buying multi-million-dollar condos in New York City. 1 bedrooms go for $1.5 million on average in Manhattan. If you want to get something like very nice and very new, at least bare minimum $900,000 in New York City. But not a lot of people are buying these, right? You also have layoffs of very high-end tech workers, layoffs of financial workers. Layoffs are at an all-time high. Unemployments are at this year's high of 3.9%, and we're still rising. And most people that get laid off are high-paying people, like 6-figure incomes. Imagine making $200,000, you want to buy a 1-bedroom condo, you can't because you got laid off. All right, this is exactly what's happening, and it's a massive headache for some of these hosts because like they really want to sell the unit because Airbnb basically just went down the drain. But at the same time, they can't sell their unit because they can't find a buyer. There's still a lot of new construction, and they're going to have to sell for a crazy loss. And what about the people in New York who have 4 or 5 different properties? Impossible to sell them, and just a massive headache, right? And this law basically just slapped Airbnb out of New York City. And if you look at this, Airbnb, they're going to be heavily restricted in New York City. And as in Friday, there's 39,000 New York City listings on Airbnb. There's a lot of Airbnb investment in New York City. This is an international hub, but now they basically just banned it overnight. Airbnb units are imploding. And guess what? If you're on the market for a New York City condo and a bunch of Airbnb properties are on the market for sale, you could probably go for a cheaper price. You could probably negotiate really well because not a lot of people are buying homes. Look at this. New York City foreclosures increased 44% year over year. Brooklyn cases surge 185%. Now, this is partly due to high interest rates, and of course, people just can't afford what they can. Like a lot of people buy these expensive apartments that's way out of the budget, and the reason why they did it was because 0 interest rates, but now it's biting them again. You also have a lot of layoffs in very lucrative markets, which is causing people to lose their jobs and go into foreclosure. And the reason why foreclosures are so high is because there's not enough buyers. There really isn't enough buyers. Look at this. New York State foreclosures increased 44%, but also sales are down in some of the boroughs by 40%. So that does add up, right? Not a lot of people buying. You can't sell your unit. You're 4 to 5 months behind on mortgage. Bank takes it away. And that's the end of the story. Not to mention, mortgage applications are the lowest since 1995. Who's stupid enough to buy a home right now 20% down? Mortgages are super duper expensive. You got to be a little bit crazy to pay like 7%, over 7% in fact, for a 30-year mortgage. It's very expensive compared to under 3.5% during 0% interest rates during the pandemic. And now we're seeing a lot of foreclosures and, of course, Airbnb implosions. Many of these units, they know that it's very difficult to sell their unit, but as long as you're generating positive cash flow, why would you even sell these units, right? But now we're seeing a lot of these units just coming on the market. They can't sell them, right? This law is basically pointing the middle finger at Airbnb, and many of these hosts just don't have anywhere to go. Now, they can rent these units out long term, but you don't make a lot, and a lot of these guys are heavily over leveraged. And many of them, if they don't do short-term rentals, they're going to have to pay out of pocket every month for the bank, HOA, and other fees. So they're actually losing a bunch of money. And when you have multiple properties, that adds up, which is causing many of these units to go for sale. When they can't be sold, bank takes them. They take a heavy loss. Now, obviously, some of you guys will be in the comments saying that you don't really care. These are all really rich people. But also keep in mind that a lot of these guys are unemployed. They're retired. Or many of them only have like 1 or 2 properties. So when you see this many units flooding the market and this many foreclosures, it's really worrisome to see this, because combined with crazy foreclosures and Airbnb crackdowns, you also have a huge wave of new construction in New York City. If you go to New York City, literally just go to Manhattan or Brooklyn, there's so much new construction. I'm on Street Easy, and every single week there's always some new condo being advertised that's being built. They're building condos like no tomorrow, and nobody's really buying them. Sales are down, right? Rents are down. Prices can't climb any higher at this point. And now you add in the Airbnb boys. Airbnb hosts, they're still doing pretty well. I mean, New York gets a lot of tenants. They get a lot of international visitors. It's still one of the most vacationed U.S. city, like, for international tourists, right? Not a lot of people are going to San Francisco, right? That's a pretty freaky area to go to. Not a lot of people are going to Seattle for vacation or Chicago, but people love New York City. New York City is still an international hub for finance. There's still multi-billion-dollar deals being made. And people go here every single year, right? For business, school, whatever it is. And now Airbnb crackdowns. Bam. This just absolutely taken a huge hit on the Airbnb industry. And we could be seeing even more implosions. This is just the beginning. Just wait a couple months. We could be seeing a lot more pain in New York City real estate. And like I said, if you're on the market for a New York City apartment, just wait a little bit. You might make a lot of money. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.